I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where I'd be writing something like this, but here we are. My name's Mike, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for almost 10 years. We have a daughter, Emily, who's 15, and she's been into playing the piano for a couple of years now. Lisa's always been a bit high maintenance, kind of bitchy, always quick to dismiss anyone she doesn't like or doesn't think is good enough. She's the type who can be sweet one second and then stabbing you in the back the next, something I learned the hard way more than once. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was stable. We fought as most couples do, but I always thought we had a good understanding of each other. That was until the last few months. Small things started changing. Lisa became more distant, secretive even. She'd stay out late discussing advanced piano lessons with Emily's teacher, Mr. Carter. She'd always tell me she was just talking about Emily's progress or some new technique, but I'd notice she'd be texting a lot more, hiding her phone when I came near, and she'd get annoyed if I asked questions. The signs were subtle at first. Sometimes she'd leave her phone around and forget to hide her messages. Other times she'd get defensive when I'd ask about her plans. I figured she was just stressed, maybe having a midlife crisis or something. I wasn't really worried yet. But then came the recital last month. Emily had been practicing for weeks, and I was proud of her. We all went to the recital hall, all dressed up, expecting a nice evening of music. What I didn't realize was that Lisa wasn't just there to watch her daughter play. I was busy saving our seats, handing out programs, making sure Emily was okay. I turned back to find Lisa nowhere in sight. That's when I saw her sneaking into the practice room with Mr. Carter. It was obvious what they were doing. They weren't discussing lessons. They looked like they were about to jump each other. Lisa had her hand on his chest, and he was leaning in close, whispering. They weren't trying to hide it at all. I froze, watching from the doorway, feeling this cold rush of shock. It was like I'd been punched in the stomach. My mind ran through all the little clues, her secretive texts, her weird attitude lately, the way she'd always brush me off when I asked questions about her lessons. All that made sense now. She'd been cheating on me with Emily's piano teacher right in the practice room during her recital, while I was out in the hall, pretending to be proud of my daughter's progress. I felt sick, betrayed, like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she do this? How could she lie so seamlessly and then have the nerve to betray me in front of everyone? I wanted to storm in there to confront her right then and there, but I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, staring at her, feeling this mix of rage and heartbreak. I couldn't believe she'd been betray me like this, right under my nose, so blatantly. I knew I had to figure out what to do next, but all I could think about was how much this hurt. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, left there trembling, trying to process what I'd just seen. All the signs, the lies, the double life she'd been leading, it was all coming crashing down. And I had no idea how I was supposed to handle it. After witnessing Lisa in that moment, my mind was spinning. I felt numb, like I was caught in some terrible nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I stayed in the hallway, watching her and Mr. Carter for a few seconds longer, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. It was so blatant, so unforgivable. My wife, my partner for over a decade, was just cheating on me in our daughter's recital practice room, of all places. That thought alone made my stomach turn. I knew I couldn't just walk in there and act like I hadn't seen a thing. No, I had to plan my next move carefully. I had to think about what I wanted, what I could do. The first instinct was rage, pure and simple. I wanted to burst in and scream at her, make her confess, make her feel the same pain I was feeling. But I knew that wouldn't help anything. I needed to be smart. I took a deep breath, quietly backed out of the hallway, and decided I'd find her later, when I'd cooled down enough to confront her without losing my head. The rest of that evening I kept my distance. I pretended everything was normal, but inside I was simmering with anger and disbelief. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the scene over and over again. I kept asking myself, how long had this been going on? Did she ever love me? Or was I just some fool she married because I was safe, convenient? All the years I'd worked hard to give her and Emily a good life, and this is what I get. A betrayal right at the heart of everything. The next day I started noticing small things. She was more secretive than ever, hiding her phone, sneaking around the house. Whenever I asked about her plans, she'd get snappy. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but she was good at hiding it behind a mask of bitchy sarcasm. I didn't want to believe she was capable of it, but deep down I knew. I knew because I'd seen her in that room, with her hand on another man's chest, whispering secrets I'd never hear. That image was burned into my brain now. I decided I had to get proof that this wasn't just some misunderstanding or a one-time thing. I started doing my own digging. I checked her phone, her email, her social media. I found her messages with Carter, flirty, suggestive, full of promises that made my skin crawl. She was lying through her teeth about everything. To her friends, she said she was just helping Emily with her lessons. To me, she said she was busy with work and the kids. But I knew better now. She'd been lying about everything, sneaking around, betraying our family. That afternoon, I confronted her. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her I saw her in the practice room, that I knew she'd been cheating. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk like she thought she could lie her way out of it. She said I was overreacting, that I was imagining things, that she and Carter were just discussing lessons. Like I was some paranoid lunatic. She even had the nerve to call me insecure, said I should trust her, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. But I wasn't buying it, not anymore. I told her I knew about the affair, that I had proof. Her face twisted, that nasty little smirk gone now, replaced by something colder. She tried to deny it, of course, said Carter was just a friend, that I was jealous, that I was imagining things. But I had enough evidence, screenshots, text messages, everything needed to blow her lies out of the water. She kept insisting she loved me, that I was crazy, that it was all just a misunderstanding. I felt my chest tighten with fury. How could she lie so easily? How could she betray me like this after all these years? The emotional impact hit me hard then. I felt betrayed, humiliated, like a damned fool. All those years I'd worked so hard to give her a good life, and she was out there screwing around with some guy behind my back. I felt this enormous pain, this deep sense of loss, like I'd lost not just my wife but my entire world. I started questioning everything. Our marriage, my worth, whether I'd been blind all along. I can't say I was proud of how I reacted, angry, hurt, yelling, accusing, but I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. That confrontation marked a turning point. I knew I had to decide what I was going to do next. I couldn't stay with her, not after this. The thought of staying and pretending everything was okay made me feel sick. I wanted out, I wanted to end this nightmare. But I also knew I had to be smart about it, plan my next steps carefully. I needed time to think, to process everything. So I told her she had to leave, that I was done, that I couldn't trust her anymore. The look she gave me was full of venom, and she spat out that I was overreacting, that I was the one who was crazy. But I didn't care. I finally saw her for what she was, a manipulative, lying, selfish woman who had destroyed everything we built together. That night I stayed up thinking about the future. I was hurt, yes, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I had been living in a kind of fog, pretending everything was fine when it clearly was. Now I saw her for what she really was, and I knew I'd have to choose whether to fight for the marriage or walk away. Either way, I was done feeling like the fool. I just didn't know yet how I was going to pick up the pieces or what my next move would be. But one thing was certain, my life would never be the same again. The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever experienced. After confrontations, after seeing her in that room with Carter, I knew I couldn't stay under the same roof. I told Lisa she had to leave. Her face twisted with anger and contempt, calling me paranoid, saying I was overreacting, like I was the one in the wrong for catching her. She denied everything, of course, but the evidence was undeniable. Still, she had this way of spinning lies so convincingly, it made me question whether I'd been blind all along. But deep down, I knew the truth, and I refused to let her gaslight me anymore. When she finally packed up her things and left, I felt this strange mix of relief and despair. The house suddenly felt empty, colder somehow. All the memories of us, all the plans we'd made, gone, shattered by one betrayal. I sat on the couch that night, staring at nothing, trying to process what had just happened. The anger was still there, bubbling under the surface, but so was a profound sadness. I'd loved her, or at least I thought I did. Now I was left with a bitter taste in my mouth, wondering how someone I trusted so completely could do this to me. In the days that followed, I started to unravel everything. I went through her phone again, digging into her messages, her emails, anything I could find. I found countless texts between her and Carter, flirty, suggestive, full of promises. She had been lying to my face for months. I also discovered that Carter had been telling her he loved her, that he wanted to be with her. That realization made my stomach churn. It was like I'd been betrayed by not just my wife, but by someone I once trusted as a professional and a friend. I felt so stupid for not seeing the signs earlier, for not catching her in the act sooner. During this time, I also reached out to Emily. She's a smart girl, and I knew she had a right to know what was going on. I sat her down and told her everything, about Lisa's affair, about how her mother had been lying and sneaking around. Emily's face was a mix of shock and tears. She loved her mom, but she was also furious. I could see it in her eyes. She felt betrayed too. I told her to be strong, to stay focused on her piano and her life, and that I was there for her no matter what. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like my world was crashing down, yet I had to keep it together for Emily's sake at least. I was angry at Lisa, yes, but I was also hurt, deeply hurt. I kept asking myself, why? Why did she do this? How could she betray everything we had? I replayed our last talk, her words, her lies. I wondered if I missed any signs, if I should have seen it coming. But honestly, part of me didn't want to believe it. I wanted to think she was just stressed, that it was some mistake. But the evidence said otherwise. Over time, I realized I couldn't keep living in this limbo of pain and betrayal. I started thinking about what I wanted next. Do I try to forgive her? Do I focus on rebuilding, or do I cut my losses and move on? The truth was, I was leaning toward ending it. I couldn't see myself staying with someone who'd so clearly lied and cheated, especially with our daughter's piano teacher of all people. That was the last straw for me. I didn't want that kind of toxic environment around Emily, and I sure as hell didn't want to keep living with the scars of betrayal. One day, I sat down with Emily and told her I was planning to get a lawyer. I wanted to make sure I protected myself and her. I wanted to get custody of Emily, as I didn't trust Lisa to keep this whole mess out of her life. Emily nodded quietly, her young face full of confusion and sadness. I promised her I'd be there for her, that everything would be okay eventually. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't stay silent or pretend everything was fine anymore. I had to face the reality of what Lisa had done and decide how to move forward, alone if I had to, but with the hope of somehow making things better for my daughter and me. I also started to rebuild myself emotionally. I saw a therapist, tried to process the anger, the heartbreak, the humiliation. I realized I'd been a fool, but I also knew I deserved better. I deserved honesty, respect, loyalty, and I wasn't going to settle for anything less. So I made a promise to myself. I'd get through this mess, I'd protect my daughter, and I'd learn the hard lessons this betrayal had taught me. It was a long road ahead, but I was determined to walk it, no matter how painful it was. Now I'm here, trying to piece my life back together, wondering what my future holds. All I know is I'll never forget what she did, and I'll never trust her the same way again. That's the bitter truth I have to live with. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that betrayal cuts deep, way deeper than I ever thought possible. The weeks that followed were like living in a fog. I moved out of the house, into a small apartment nearby, just to get some distance. Honestly, I didn't want to see Lisa, didn't want to hear from her, didn't want to be reminded of what she did every time I walked past the house. It was weird being separated from Emily too, but I knew it was best for her to stay with me for now. She needed stability, and I wasn't about to let her grow up thinking betrayal was just part of life. I told her that her mother was going through some problems, and that I was doing everything I could to keep her safe and loved. I threw myself into work, trying to keep my mind from spiraling out of control. But truthfully, I spent more time thinking about what I'd do next. Should I fight for the marriage? Should I go for full custody? Honestly, every time I thought about Lisa's sneaky affair, I felt this deep resentment building inside me. The fact that she'd cheat on me with Carter, right in our daughter's recital room, was something I couldn't get past. That was the most humiliating, disgusting betrayal I'd ever experienced. It made me furious just remembering how she looked confident bitchy, lying through her teeth. One thing I did realize is how much her attitude had changed. She was bitter, defensive, and still trying to spin her lies. She told mutual friends that I was overreacting, that she was innocent, that I was just jealous or insecure. I knew better. I knew she was trying to manipulate everyone, making herself look like the victim. But I didn't care about her reputation anymore. I cared about Emily, about making sure she was okay, and about protecting myself from being manipulated again. That's when I started to dig deeper into Carter's background. I wanted to know everything about him, his work, his past, whether he had any history of affairs or shady behavior. I found out he had a reputation for being a player, someone who chased younger women and used his position as Emily's piano teacher to get close to them. That made me even angrier. The idea that my daughter's teacher, someone I'd trusted with her education, was really just a predator in disguise. It made me sick to my stomach. I also learned that Lisa had been talking to Carter long before the recital. The texts I found proved they'd been planning this for weeks, maybe longer. She had been so good at covering her tracks, but I was finally catching up. It was clear she'd been manipulating the situation, pretending to be this good mother, this loving wife, while secretly sneaking around with him. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I'd always thought she was somewhat bitchy but loyal. Turns out she'd been lying to my face for months. The anger boiled over one evening. I called Lisa and told her I wanted to meet. She refused, said she was too busy with work, that she hadn't done anything wrong. But I didn't care about her excuses. I wanted her to hear it straight from me that I knew the truth. I told her I was done pretending, that I was going to take legal action if necessary. The conversation was heated. She accused me of trying to ruin her, said I was just jealous and insecure. I told her she was a liar, a cheat, and that I never wanted to see her again. We hung up, but I felt a sense of catharsis, like I had finally taken control of the situation. Meanwhile, Emily was struggling. She loved her mom, but she couldn't understand how she could do this. I saw her crying quietly one night, clutching her piano sheet music. I sat with her and told her that sometimes, even people we love do bad things, but that doesn't mean we stop loving them. I promised her that we'd get through this together, that she didn't have to blame herself. I wanted her to know she was still safe, still loved. Somehow that helped her a little. Seeing her like that made me furious at Lisa all over again. How could she do this to her own daughter? How could she be so selfish? I also started considering my options. I knew I needed to get legal advice about custody and divorce. I wasn't about to let Lisa manipulate her way back into our lives, especially when I had proof of her affair. I wanted Emily to be protected from her mother's lies and her boyfriend's shady influence. It was clear that Lisa would do everything to deny, deflect, and manipulate, but I was prepared to fight for what's best for Emily. Honestly, it's hard to describe the mix of feelings I have: anger, sadness, betrayal, even a little relief. The relief comes from finally seeing her for who she truly is, someone I don't trust anymore. The anger is still there, burning inside me. I keep replaying that moment at the recital, her hand on Carter's chest, the look in her eyes. That image is burned into my brain. And the sadness. That's from realizing I lost the wife I thought I knew, the mother I thought loved her family. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing: I will protect Emily at all costs. That's my top priority now. I've been hurt beyond words, but I'm not giving up. I've got enough evidence, enough resolve to see this through. And I do know that I'll never trust her again, not the same way. Once you're betrayed that deeply, everything changes. And honestly, I don't see how I come back from this. But I'll keep fighting for my daughter and for myself. The legal process took longer than I expected, but finally I had everything in motion. I hired a lawyer and we started preparing for a divorce and custody battle. Honestly, I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where I had to fight for my daughter's safety and well-being against my own wife, but there it was. Lisa was still trying to deny everything, calling me crazy, accusing me of trying to ruin her reputation. She threw everything she could, claims I was abusive, that I was jealous, that I was making false accusations. But I had enough proof. The texts, the messages, her secret meetings with Carter. It was rock solid. Meanwhile, Emily was holding up as best she could. She was mostly quiet, but I could see the pain in her eyes. Sometimes she'd ask questions about her mom, about why she was acting so different. I'd tell her that sometimes adults make mistakes and that it's okay to be upset. I promised her that I'd always be there, that she didn't have to choose sides, but I could tell she was confused and hurt. She kept asking if Lisa still loved her, if she was going to come back. It broke my heart to see her so vulnerable. During this time, I also started to rebuild myself emotionally. I went to therapy. I needed help dealing with this betrayal, with the raw anger and sadness inside me. I learned to process my feelings, to accept that this was now part of my life. I also started working on myself, getting into better shape, reconnecting with old friends, trying to find some sense of normalcy. It's not easy. Every day I wake up with this heavy weight on my chest, but I remind myself that I'm doing this for Emily, for my own sanity, and for the hope that someday I can move beyond this darkness. Lisa's constant attempts to manipulate the situation only fueled my resolve. She'd call or text, trying to spin her stories to make me look like the villain. She insisted she was innocent, that Carter was just a friend, that I was just jealous. She even started calling Emily, trying to sway her, telling her that I was mean, that I didn't love her anymore. I told Emily to ignore her, that her mom was trying to confuse her. Emily looked at me sometimes with this scared, confused look, and I felt like I'd failed her in some way. I just wanted to shield her from all this ugliness. The custody hearing started looming, and I was terrified but determined. I knew Lisa would do everything to try and get full custody, painting herself as the victim, portraying me as the bad guy. But I had the evidence, I had witnesses, and I was willing to fight for what's best for Emily. I told my lawyer I wanted joint custody, with supervised visits if necessary. I didn't trust Lisa not to manipulate her or keep her in the dark, and I refused to let her turn Emily against me like she was trying to do. Throughout everything, I kept asking myself how Lisa could do this, how she could betray her own family, lie so effortlessly, and think she could get away with it. I kept telling myself that I was better off without her, that I deserved honesty and respect. But deep inside, I couldn't help feeling the pain of betrayal, the loss of the life I thought I had. The woman I married, the mother of my child, turned out to be someone I didn't even recognize anymore. I felt like I was living someone else's nightmare, waiting for the day I could wake up and leave this all behind. One night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. I realized I was more resilient than I'd thought. I didn't want to be bitter forever, but I also didn't want to forget what she did. I learned that trust, once broken, this badly, is almost impossible to mend. And I learned that you can't control other people's choices, only how you react to them. Most importantly, I learned that I had to put Emily first, above all this chaos, above the pain, above the betrayal. So I made my decision. No matter what the courts say, I know I'll do everything to keep Emily safe and loved. I won't let her fall into the same trap I did, thinking that love can excuse lies and betrayal. I'll be honest with her, support her, and give her what she needs. And I'll leave Lisa to deal with her own guilt and consequences. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but I'm ready to face it. I just want peace, for Emily's sake and for mine. That's all I really want now, a fresh start, a new chapter without the betrayal and lies. It's what I owe myself and my daughter. Looking back now, I can't help but feel a strange mix of relief and bitterness. The pain of discovering Lisa's affair still lingers, but I've come to accept that some things just can't be undone. The betrayal cut so deep. It changed everything I thought I knew about her and about myself. I used to believe in fairy tales and the idea that marriage was sacred, that love was forever. Turns out that's not always true. Sometimes you get blindsided by someone you trust and the whole world shifts in an instant. The legal process has mostly come to an end. Emily and I are finally settling into a new routine, one that's healthier, safer, and more honest. I won't pretend that I'm completely over it. Sometimes I still wake up with a flash of anger or sadness, remembering that moment in the recital room and everything that led up to it. But I've learned to live with the pain, to let it fade into just another part of my story. Because what matters now is protecting Emily and making sure she grows up knowing what real love and loyalty look like, lessons her mother failed to teach her. I won't lie. I feel betrayed, humiliated, and angry every day. But I also feel stronger than I ever did before. Betrayal forces you to grow, to reevaluate what's truly important. I've learned that trust is fragile and that people can surprise you in good ways and bad. I've learned that sometimes the best thing to do is cut ties with toxicity, even if it hurts in the short term. And I've learned that kids are resilient, they love fiercely, and they forgive faster than we think. Now I focus on rebuilding myself, on healing the wounds Lisa left behind. I see a therapist regularly, and I make a point to stay connected with friends and family who support me. I've even started dating again, slowly, carefully, not rushing into anything. Because I know the scars from her betrayal will stay with me for a while. But I also know I deserve happiness, love, and honesty, things I refuse to settle for with Lisa. Looking at Emily, I see hope. She's strong, brave, and already trying to piece her life back together. I tell her every day how much I love her and how proud I am of her strength. I want her to grow up knowing that even when life throws its worst at you, you can survive, you can rebuild, and you can find happiness again. I hope she learns from all this that loyalty and honesty matter more than anything, that a real family is built on trust, not lies. As for me, I've realized that I can live without the person who betrayed me so profoundly. It hurts, yes, but I'm learning to let go of the anger and accept that some wounds will take time to heal. I refuse to carry the weight of her betrayal forever. Instead, I choose to focus on what I can control, my future, Emily's future, and my own happiness. I want her to know that even after the worst, life still moves forward. That pain can turn into growth if you let it. So I guess that's where I am now. I'm not perfect and I won't pretend that every day is easy, but I'm alive, I'm stronger, and I'm ready to move on, carrying the lessons of betrayal with me as a reminder that I deserve better always. I hope this story serves as a warning but also as a testament. No matter how broken you feel, you can rebuild. You can find happiness again. You just have to be brave enough to walk away from what's toxic, hold on to what's true, and never settle for less than you deserve.